Right now, you are looking at the largest body of water in the world. You think you know what the ideal resort looks like? You are catastrophically mistaken. The Mediterranean Sea kills more people every year than any other body of water on the planet. This is not just a beach with beautiful sand. This is a combat zone, where nature itself wages war against humanity. Beneath these blue waters lie radioactive dumping grounds, collapsing supervolcanoes, and currents powerful enough to snap steel ships in half like matchsticks. Why do scientists call this place a graveyard of travelers? And why do tour operators beg us not to tell you this truth? And why, right now, are we about to show you something that will make your blood freeze in your veins? August 1970. The research vessel Glomar Challenger is drifting in the very center of the Mediterranean Sea, hundreds of kilometers from the nearest shore. The sun beats down mercilessly, and the sea appears deceptively calm. A team of geologists, led by Kenneth Hsu, is preparing for an operation that looks like boring routine on paper. Their task sounds simple. Lower a massive drilling column to a depth of 3 kilometers, pierce the soft layers of seabed silt, and extract rock samples to refine data on ancient climate conditions. No one on board, from the captain to the laboratory assistant, has any idea that within a few hours they will make a discovery that will make them shudder with horror and rewrite every geology textbook. The drill descends into the black, icy abyss. Operators watch the instruments with tension, expecting the familiar soft resistance characteristic of viscous marine sediments. But suddenly, the entire giant drilling rig begins to vibrate, emitting a grinding, screeching sound. The pressure gauges slam into the red zone, signaling extreme overload. The drill has struck something incredibly hard, almost impenetrable. This is physically impossible. At such a depth, in the very center of the sea basin, there should be no rock, no granite. Engineers, gripped by panic, begin to speculate the most bizarre possibilities. Perhaps they have hit the dome of a sunken ancient city, or the hull of some gigantic unknown object. When the column is finally raised to the surface with enormous effort and the risk of collapse, a dead silence falls over the deck. Geologists bend over the core, expecting to see basalt. But this is not stone. In their hands lies a cylinder of dazzling white material, hard as marble, gypsum mixed with dense salt. But the real shock comes in the laboratory, when the sample is placed under a powerful microscope. Among the salt crystals, scientists see fossilized remains of stromatolites. These are colonies of blue-green algae that can only live in shallow water under scorching sunlight. They feed on light. Finding them at the bottom of the deepest and darkest basin in Europe was as impossible as finding a living fish in the sands of the Sahara. The crew exchange stunned glances. They realize they have just proven a theory that seemed utterly insane and impossible. Where kilometers of water now splash and ships sail, there was once sun-scorched, lifeless land. The discovery of the Glomar Challenger meant only one thing. The Mediterranean Sea once simply vanished. Imagine someone pulling the plug from a bathtub. 5 million years ago, the Strait of Gibraltar closed due to continental movement, and the sun literally dried the sea down to its bottom. In place of water remained a gigantic pit 5 kilometers deep. It was a blazing salt desert, where temperatures reached 80 degrees Celsius, a true hell on Earth, across which one could theoretically walk from Africa to Europe, if you managed to survive such inferno. But the most terrifying part came later. The water returned. The ocean broke through the natural dam and came rushing back. Scientists call this the Zanclean flood. Imagine a waterfall several kilometers wide, plunging from cloud-level heights. The flow of water was thousands of times more powerful than the Amazon River. The sea level rose by 10 meters every single day. The roar of falling water was so powerful that the ground trembled across 1,000 kilometers. Everything alive that existed at the bottom of that pit was instantly annihilated by a colossal wall of water moving at the speed of a train. Why should this concern you? Because we are in the middle of the same cycle. Africa continues to press into Europe, and Gibraltar is narrowing once again. We are living on top of a lid that can slam shut. Vast salt deposits left from that era make the seabed unstable, and the enclosed shape of the sea means that any catastrophe here turns into a meat grinder. Waves have nowhere to go. They simply reflect off the shores, destroying everything in their path. December 28, 1908. The wealthy Sicilian city of Messina awakens in the pre-dawn haze. People are preparing for the holidays. The streets smell of coffee and fresh pastries. Fishermen in the harbor check their nets before heading out. At 5:20 a.m., the world turns upside down. The earth emits a monstrous internal roar, like metal grinding against metal. And within 30 seconds, the flourishing city is reduced to heaps of stone and dust. Buildings collapse like houses of cards, burying sleeping residents beneath them. A thick cloud of limestone dust blocks out the sky, turning morning into night. Those who miraculously survive flee toward the sea in panic, hoping to escape falling walls and the fires already consuming the ruins. On the waterfront, they witness a strange, hypnotic sight. The water in the strait has suddenly retreated hundreds of meters, exposing filthy seabed strewn with flailing fish and rusted wrecks of old ships. People freeze in confusion, unable to comprehend the warning sign. They do not know that the sea has simply taken a run-up for a killing blow. Minutes later, the horizon literally rears up. A 12-meter wall of black water, mixed with silt, boat debris and stones, crashes down upon the crowded coastline with a deafening roar. The tsunami claims those spared by the earthquake. Water twists people, carts and fragments of homes into a deadly carousel, grinding all life into nothing. Help comes from an unexpected direction. Russian sailors from ships anchored nearby are the first to rush into this hell, pulling people from beneath rubble and water. When the sea finally calms, the city of Messina no longer exists. More than 100,000 people are dead. It was one of the deadliest disasters in European history, and it came from the very place where salvation was expected, from the calm, familiar strait. The tragedy of Messina was not an accident, nor the wrath of gods, but a brutal geological zakonomernest, inevitability. The Mediterranean Sea is a gigantic tectonic press. The African plate collides with the Eurasian plate at a speed of 2 centimeters per year. This seems slow, like the growth of fingernails, but the energy accumulating in the rocks is equivalent to thousands of nuclear bombs. The entire region from Gibraltar to Turkey is literally riddled with active faults, ready to tear apart at any second like an over-tightened string. The main danger of this sea lies in its shape. In the open Pacific Ocean, a tsunami can travel thousands of kilometers and dissipate its energy. Here, it has nowhere to go. This is the physical bathtub effect. A wave strikes one shore, reflects, travels to the other, amplifying itself through interference and resonance. The travel time of waves to densely populated resort areas is only 20 to 40 minutes. That is catastrophically little time to evacuate millions of tourists, who will not even understand what is happening until the water closes over their heads. Today, seismologists watch the Hellenic Arc, the subduction zone south of the island of Crete, with undisguised horror. Stress has been accumulating there for more than 1,000 years without release. The last time this spring-loaded mechanism snapped, in the year 365 AD, the tsunami was so powerful that it hurled massive ships onto rooftops in Alexandria, kilometers inland. Scientists are certain that a repeat of this scenario is inevitable. It is a matter of mathematics, not probability. We have built hotels, ports and cities directly on the firing line, forgetting that this sea knows how to kill, quickly, massively, and without warning. In July 1831, sailors in the Sicilian Strait noticed something terrifying. The water began to boil. Columns of caustic steam rose from the depths, and the air filled with a choking sulfur stench that burned the eyes. Dead fish floated belly up to the surface, covering the sea with a silver carpet stretching hundreds of square miles. Captains changed course in horror. Within days, the impossible happened. From the boiling foam, amid thunderous explosions, a new island rose. It was a black, smoking volcanic cone, 60 meters high. The news spread around the world faster than the wind. Britain immediately sent a ship and planted its flag on the still hot rocks, naming the land Graham Island. Sicily claimed it as well, calling it Ferdinandea in honor of its king. France also entered the dispute, naming it Julia. The great powers were ready to go to war over this lifeless fragment of new land with strategic significance. But while diplomats wrote protest notes and admirals prepared cannons, the sea solved the problem in its own way. The island began to sink back into the abyss as quickly as it had appeared. Waves washed away the loose volcanic ash, preventing it from hardening. Within 6 months, the island vanished, leaving diplomats looking foolish and sailors gripped by mystical fear. Yet the story did not end there, and it is far more dangerous than it seems. Recently, Italian military sonar and divers discovered that Ferdinandea did not disappear. The summit of this volcano lies just 6 meters below the surface of the water. That is less than the draft of a large ship, and it is growing. Seismographs record increasing rumbling and magma movement within its depths. The ghost is preparing to return, and this time its emergence may prove fatal not for diplomacy, but for all of Europe. The seemingly comic story of the disappearing island is only the tip of a deadly iceberg. The Mediterranean Sea hides on its seabed the most dangerous and unpredictable volcanic monsters on the planet. Ferdinandea is a mere trifle compared to what lies dormant in the dark depths of the Tyrrhenian Sea. There, beneath the water, rests the Marsili underwater supervolcano. It is a colossal mountain, 3,000 meters high and 70 kilometers long. It is significantly larger than the infamous killer of Pompeii, Vesuvius, and more powerful than Etna. The main problem with Marsili lies in the fact that its walls are incredibly fragile and unstable. They have been thinned over centuries by the vozdeyствие of hot hydrothermal vents and gases. Volcanologists call it a house of cards, ready to collapse at any movement. A moderate earthquake or an internal surge of magma would be enough for a massive section of the volcano to collapse downward. This would trigger an underwater landslide of colossal scale. millions of cubic meters of rock would plunge into the abyss within seconds. The consequences would be apocalyptic for the entire region. Computer models show that such a landslide would instantly generate a tsunami that would strike the coasts of Campania, Calabria, and Sicily. Millions of people would have less than 20 minutes to save themselves. The wave, losing no energy, would engulf beaches, ports, and coastal cities, sweeping everything away in its path. This sea is not merely heated from below by magma. It is literally sitting on a powder keg, with a fuse that is already burning, but we do not see its flame beneath the beautiful, deceptively calm blue water. March 3rd, 2010. The luxury cruise liner Louis Majesty, resembling a floating city, is calmly sailing through the Gulf of Lion. On board are more than 1,000 passengers. Music is playing, people are dining in restaurants and strolling along the decks, enjoying their vacation. The weather is overcast, but not stormy. The wind is moderate. Wave height is just over 2 meters. For such a giant, nothing more than a light ripple. No warnings have come from meteorologists. The radars are clear. The horizon is calm. Suddenly, without any warning or visible cause, the sea in front of the ship rears up. The captain watches in horror as out of the grey chop, a vertical wall of water rises, as tall as a 3-story building. This is not an ordinary wave. It is a water monster, appearing from nowhere, like a ghost. The crew has no time even to turn the ship's bow into the impact or to sound an alarm. The first wave crashes into the side with a thunderous blow, shattering the reinforced glass of the observation lounge on the 5th deck. Tons of water mixed with debris burst inside, sweeping away furniture, equipment, and people. Then, without giving the ship a chance to recover, 2 more identical walls of water follow. The liner lists sharply, the lights go out, and screams are drowned out by the roar of the water. A minute later, the sea becomes calm again, as if nothing had happened. But in the destroyed lounge lie 2 dead passengers and 14 who are seriously injured. The captain is in shock. According to all the laws of physics and marine science, such waves should not exist here. What happened to the Louis Majesty is called a rogue wave, a killer wave, an outcast wave. For a long time, scientists considered reports of such waves to be myths invented by drunken sailors or optical illusions. But the Mediterranean Sea has brutally proven that they are real. And here, in this enclosed basin, they occur more often and behave more aggressively than in the open ocean. The reason lies in the unique, deadly hydrology and geometry of this basin. In the Mediterranean Sea, storm waves have a very steep profile and a short period. They arrive one after another, tightly packed like machine gun bursts, giving ships no time to rise between impacts. When such waves reflect off steep shores or islands or collide with opposing wave systems, they can overlap. In physics, this is called interference. 2 3-meter waves meeting at one point do not cancel each other out. They instantly create a 6-meter wall of water. If there are 3, the energy is summed, creating a monster. In addition, there are currents here that act like optical lenses for water, focusing wave energy into a single point. The danger lies in absolute unpredictability. No satellite, radar, or computer can detect the birth of such waves because the process takes only seconds. This sea is a perfect trap. It can be calm and lulling, and in the next moment deliver a lethal blow, like a predator leaping from ambush. And no size of vessel, whether a yacht or a liner, guarantees safety. September 21, 1987. The cargo ship, Rigel, sailing under the Maltese flag, sends out a distress signal near Palermo. The captain reports engine failure and water entering the hold. The crew evacuates into lifeboats suspiciously quickly and in an organized manner, without even attempting to fight for the ship's survival. A few hours later, the vessel sinks. According to official documents, the holds contained harmless, cheap cargo, granulated cement and timber. The case is quickly closed, insurance is paid out, and the ship is forgotten. But several years later, Italian fishermen in that area begin hauling up nets coated with a strange, sticky yellow slime. People develop chemical burns on their hands. Uncontrollable nausea and dizziness begin right on deck. Fish caught there show grotesque mutations and a strange odor. Prosecutors launch an investigation, dig into the archives, and uncover a horrifying truth worthy of a gangster film. The Rigel was not an ordinary cargo ship. It was one of the so-called ships of poison. The mafia, working with large industrial corporations, used old, rusting vessels to cheaply dispose of toxic and radioactive waste. Instead of expensive and complex processing, they simply sank the ships in the deep basins of the sea. The cement listed in the documents was merely a cover for containers filled with enriched uranium, dioxins, and heavy metals. The story of the Rigel is not an isolated case. It is only a fragment of a systemic catastrophe. According to estimates by environmentalists and Interpol, dozens, if not hundreds, of vessels loaded with toxic cargo lie on the seabed of the Mediterranean. Metal containers are not eternal. Salt water and monstrous pressure corrode their walls. The service life of hulls sunk in the 1980s and 1990s has expired. We are sitting on a chemical bomb whose detonator has already been triggered and whose poison has begun to leak. The Mediterranean Sea is a closed body of water, almost isolated from the ocean. Water here renews very slowly. A full exchange cycle through Gibraltar takes about 100 years. Everything we dump here stays with us for centuries. Toxins do not disperse into the world ocean. They accumulate, increasing in concentration. The level of microplastics here is among the highest in the world. Chemicals enter the food chain, from plankton to small fish, from them to predators, and from tuna and swordfish straight onto our plates in expensive restaurants. There is yet another curse of the past. After the Second World War, the Allies solved the problem of disposing of chemical weapons in the simplest way. They dumped them into the Adriatic Sea. Thousands of tons of aerial bombs filled with mustard gas and sarin lie on the seabed. Now these bombs have rusted through, releasing clots of poisonous gel. Dead zones are forming, where oxygen levels drop to zero and all life dies in agony. The sea we consider the cradle of life is slowly but surely turning into a reservoir of toxic broth. We poisoned it, and now it is methodically poisoning us in return. September 10th, 2023. Residents of the Libyan city of Derna heard a strange, growing sound. It was not the noise of rain, although a torrential downpour had been falling for a full day, turning streets into rivers. It was a low, vibrating roar, like the approach of a squadron of jet aircraft. People trapped in their homes thought the worst danger was flooded basements, but true death was already rushing down from above along the channel of a dried river. Two dams built upstream on the Wadi Derna River could not withstand the monstrous pressure of water. They burst almost simultaneously, minutes apart. A wave as tall as a 7-story building, carrying millions of tons of liquid mud, massive boulders, and uprooted trees, slammed into the sleeping city at 3 o'clock in the morning. It was like a pinpoint nuclear strike. Entire districts of multi-story buildings were simply sliced off, erased from their foundations, and swept into the sea along with their inhabitants. At dawn, survivors and rescuers saw an apocalyptic scene that was impossible to believe. The city had been torn in half by a gigantic scar of mud. The sea near the shore had turned brown with debris, furniture, cars, and thousands of bodies. More than 11,000 people were killed. Thousands more went missing, carried out into the open sea. Meteorologists stared at satellite images and could not believe their eyes. The cause of the catastrophe was Storm Daniel. But it did not look like an ordinary Mediterranean cyclone. It had a clear, ominous eye, like a Category 5 Caribbean hurricane. In the deserts of Libya, this simply should not have been possible according to the laws of climate. But it happened. The tragedy of Derna opened a new, terrifying chapter in the history of climate threats. Scientists gave this phenomenon a name, the Medicane, a hybrid of the words Mediterranean and hurricane. It was once considered an axiom that forming a true tropical hurricane required vast oceanic space and water temperatures above 27 degrees Celsius. The Mediterranean Sea was considered too small, too narrow, and too calm for such monsters. We were wrong, and that mistake cost thousands of lives. Due to global warming, the sea has turned into a gigantic heat accumulator. Water temperatures now regularly exceed 30 degrees Celsius. Like in the tropics, this transforms the basin into a boiling cauldron of excess energy. Energy that once dissipated is now trapped in an enclosed space. When cold, dry air from the north collides with overheated, humid air above the sea, an explosive process of convection occurs, twisting into a spiral of death. Medicanes possess monstrous destructive power. They are more compact than oceanic typhoons, but their energy density is higher. They are more vicious. They arise suddenly, develop rapidly, and strike densely populated coastlines that are unprepared for them. We have no defense systems against such blows, because our cities, dams, and drainage systems were designed for the mild climate of the last century. Storm Daniel proved that the old rules no longer work. The sea has entered a new regime, a regime of active generation of superstorms capable of erasing cities. But the most terrifying and irreversible transformation is happening underwater, silently and invisibly to human eyes. Scientists call it tropicalization, but in essence, it is a full-scale alien invasion. After the expansion of the Suez Canal and the rise in water temperature, natural barriers collapsed. Hundreds of predatory species from the Red Sea and the Indian Ocean poured into the Mediterranean. This phenomenon is known as Lessepian migration, and it is leading to the complete collapse of the local ecosystem that formed over millions of years. The invaders behave aggressively and encounter no resistance. One of the most dangerous newcomers is the silver-cheeked pufferfish. It is an ugly-looking fish that contains a deadly neurotoxin, tetrodotoxin, in its skin, liver, and organs. It is thousands of times more potent than cyanide, and there is no antidote. Local predators that attempt to eat the pufferfish die. Humans who unknowingly prepare it die in horrific agony from paralysis. Pufferfish reproduce at a terrifying rate, ripping fishing nets apart with their powerful teeth and destroying commercial fish species at the root. Fishermen in Turkey and Greece already call this disaster biblical in scale. The sea is becoming empty. Another enemy is the fireworm. These creatures once lived only at depth, but in warmer waters they now emerge onto shallow beaches. Their bodies are covered with millions of bristles filled with venom that causes tissue necrosis and hellish pain upon contact. Add to this invasive killer algae such as caulerpa, which carpet the seabed with toxic green mats, depriving the water of oxygen. We are not witnessing mere climate change. We are witnessing a shift of a geological epoch in real time. The Mediterranean Sea as we knew it, with tuna, dolphins and safe beaches, is dying. In its place, a new, toxic and hostile ocean is being born, one in which humans are no longer at the top of the food chain. This is the logical finale of complacency. The Mediterranean Sea has watched our rise and fall for too long. It has seen gods be born and empires die. The Romans called it our sea, believing it belonged to them. But the ruins of Rome have long been overgrown with grass, and the sea remains. We build hotels at the water's edge, unaware that we are standing at the threshold of a crypt. Humanity is fragile and arrogant. We look for threats in space, fear asteroids and aliens. But the real abyss is staring up at us from below, rolling pebbles onto the beaches of Nice and Antalya. History is cyclical, and when this cycle ends, the Mediterranean Sea will once again become the sole master of these lands, hiding beneath its salty waters the traces of our pride. No,